Hey, Arnie here. I'm a freshman at college, and I guess you could call me a nerd. I mean, I'm fascinated by computers and techie stuff, and I'm majoring in computer science. I'm just a regular guy who would much rather spend my free time on my computer than out partying. I don't really care about my appearance. As I see it, clothes are clothes. So a slouchy t-shirt and jeans will do me. I also suck at socializing. I clam up and just end up talking nonsense. I guess that's why I usually stick to being in my own computer guy bubble. Well, at least I did until I met Camilla. I'd never had a girlfriend before, which, given my awkwardness, was no great surprise. My first meeting with Camilla, well, it didn't go all that well. I was running late for my study group in the library. So I was rushing up the stairs and I bumped straight into Camilla, who was reading a book while walking down the stairs. I watched on horrified as she fell down the stairs. She fractured her ankle, and I felt so guilty and blamed myself for this. After that, I tried being the good guy and helping her out. I offered to carry her bag to class, but she huffed out. "Could you please stay away from me? I don't need your help, okay?" Then she glared at me. Another time I bumped into Camilla while she was sitting on the grass and passionately reading Twilight. So I bought her a signed copy of the second book in the series. She stuck her nose up at me, told me that book was so last decade, then limped off. I guess she was still mad at me for the accident. But then the next time I saw her, she was reading the book I gave her. She giggled, then said to me, "Okay, this is actually a really neat gift, thanks." After that, we started talking more, and I even helped her out with her studying. I'd never met a girl like Camilla before. She was so gentle, girly, and pretty. But like my thing was computers, her thing was books. She adored them, and she always had her head in a book. I admired this about her. A girl who reads as many books as she did must have a beautiful soul. I found myself falling for her, but being the awkward guy I am, I didn't think I stood a chance. Then one time after I'd finished helping her study, she leaned over and kissed me. Trust me, no one was as shocked about this as me. Not long after, we became an official couple, and at first everything was great. However, Camilla gradually became more and more addicted to her reading. She loved romance fiction, from the classics such as Pride and Prejudice, to more modern affairs such as The Fault in Our Stars. She loved them all. There were days she got so caught up in these fictional worlds that she read from night till early next morning, and she even missed college because she was too tired to go. We went to the library a lot to study together. While I studied, she usually stared dreamily out the window, lost in whatever fictional world was currently occupying her mind. And when I'd called her name, she never answered. After she finished each book, she went into this depressive state. It's like she couldn't deal with reality. After she'd finished reading The Notebook, she moaned that I wasn't handsome and attentive like Noah. I tried to ignore her, but then she finished reading the second book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series and shouted at me that Peter not only pampers his girlfriend, but he also plays sports and has a six-pack. She told me I should start working out and stop eating so much chocolate. Okay, so her comment did hurt. I always sucked at sports and was self-conscious about my lanky frame. So I started going to the gym to please Camilla. She seemed happy about this and mentioned something about being proud of having a boyfriend who was good at both studying and sports, just like the handsome guys in romantic fiction. But honestly, I didn't like the gym all that much. My friend was on the basketball team, so I told him I wanted to join. Yeah, I hated it, but Camilla thought it was very impressive. During my first game, she stood at the side of the court and shouted, "Baby, I love you! Come on! I know you can do it, honey!" OMG, talk about cringeworthy. I knew she was very proud seeing me playing basketball, so it made me full of energy and I just longed for scoring. I was so nervous that I accidentally scored in the wrong net. Suddenly, she disappointedly shouted, "Oh no, Edward would never have embarrassed me like that." And that's when all of my teammates turned to me and laughed frantically, which made me really embarrassed. I threw the ball against the playground and walked to her angrily and asked, "Edward? Who's Edward?" Then I stormed off, leaving her there watching me in shock. I was so sick of being compared with some handsome guy in her fictional world, and sporty things were not an exception. I couldn't take it anymore. The more I participated in sporty things, the more I realized how much I hated them. I pined for computer algorithms. I wasn't a jock, no. I was the nerd who got a thrill from staying up all night writing code. That weekend, probably she wanted to make it up, so she asked me to go to the cinema to see some romance film. I was a bit cooled off, so I agreed. I showed up outside her place to pick her up, and my phone beeped. It was Camilla, telling me she'd be reading all day, now she was too tired to go. Besides, she'd reached the climax of her book, and it was too compelling to put down. I was furious. I stormed back to my place. It felt like Camilla preferred these make-believe guys to me, her actual boyfriend. The next morning, I was still pretty mad. When I explained to Camilla how I felt, she started crying. Then she told me it was my fault for not caring about her last night, as she said she was tired. She wanted a hunk to bring her food, pamper her, and look after her. I couldn't believe what she was saying. Just because I wasn't as dashing as some fictional character guy didn't mean I didn't look after her. How dare she even say otherwise? I know this was crazy, but the problem is I really do love Camilla. So I came to the conclusion that if she wanted some perfect guy, I could be him, right? That evening, after a long day with loads of studying to do, I was about to take a bath, and Camilla texted me, "Bae, I want to eat spaghetti, but it's raining outside." So even though I was tired, I rushed up to buy it for her and brought it to her place. You should have seen her face. She was extremely happy. Seeing her happy made my heart melt. Everything was good, but I ended up being sick. Blech. The next day, Camilla came to my place to look after me. She made me soup and helped me eat it. I ended up falling asleep, and when I woke up, she'd gone. I didn't think that much of this at the time, but then 3 days later, she still hadn't responded to any of my calls or messages. Finally, she answered my call and told me the reason why she was mad. Turns out she imagined herself as the main character in the romantic fiction book she just read. In that story, when the handsome guy got sick and his lover came to visit him, that's when she was feeding him, he kissed her. So she expected me to do the same, only I fell asleep instead. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was crazy. How could she expect me to be romantic when I was trying my hardest not to throw up? We arranged to meet at a cafe. There I told her how I felt. I just can't do this anymore. I can't be some sporty, handsome, sword-fighting charmer. I'm just a regular geeky me. Accept me for me or it's over. She apologized and began crying. She told me she just got so carried away with the scenarios in her books that she'd try her hardest to be a better girlfriend. A week passed by and Camilla seemed a little better. Then one time when we were outside the college, she pointed over at this sophomore guy and told me she was going to allow him to pursue her because in most romantic fiction books, the main female character usually had 2 guys competing for her. If I could beat this Zach guy off, then it proves I love her. If not, it must mean I never loved her in the first place. What? I stared at her open-mouthed. She'd definitely gone too far this time. I told Camilla I wasn't playing her dumb games anymore, then I stormed off. The next day I saw her talking to that Zach guy. Whatever he was saying to her was making her laugh, and she was twirling her hair around her finger and giggling. Great. Not only was this guy good-looking, but he was charming too. He resembled a gallant hero, while I was more like the villain. The problem is, I still love Camilla. How can I get her to realize that romance fiction fever is just that, fiction? Even though I might not be some handsome hero who leaves flower petal trails all over the house, I'm still a good guy who just wants to look after her.
Hey guys, Stephanie here. I have a question for you. Promise to be honest, okay? Have you ever had a crush on one of your teachers? If yes, I guess you could somehow relate to my story. I'm going to tell you all about my super fine boyfriend, Joseph. I put so much effort into winning him over, but trust me, he was worth every second. So this all began last year when I was a sophomore at college, majoring in performing arts. When it came to boys my own age, talk about boring. I didn't pay much attention to them as they were so childish and honestly, they just annoyed me. If I had to choose between dating some immature jerk or staying single forever, there was no contest. One day, I was over at my bestie Susie's place. We've been friends since forever, and even though we now went to different colleges, we still met up loads. As we were eating Susie's delicious homemade burgers, we talked about college, outfits, boys, that kind of thing. That's when Susie told me all about the new professor at her college called Joseph. She described him as extremely handsome, tall, intelligent, sporty, and he owned a motorcycle. He sounded far too good to be true, so I convinced myself there must be a catch. Perhaps he had bad acne, or maybe he had a wife and 3 kids or something. He doesn't have acne, he's not married, and he looks like this. She held up her phone. On it was the image of a seriously hot guy. I grabbed the phone off her and scrolled through his social media pictures. Jeez, this guy was so fine. So what if I'd never met him? I knew I needed to make him mine. I needed a plan, so I begged Susie to help me out. She thought I was crazy. But hey, she'd been besties with me forever, so she knew I like to go all out on things. She snuck me into class with her. It was economics. Boring! But staring at Joseph was worth it, and his voice was so dreamy. I knew I couldn't just sit there. I needed to make Joseph notice me. After class, I walked over to him, swished back my hair, and in my cutest voice said, "Hey, great class. But there are a few points I'm struggling to understand. Perhaps you could help me out?" He looked a bit awkward, but he agreed. I blabbed out a few questions about the class, and he waffled out some answers which I didn't understand. I knew I'd have to do better than this to keep his attention, so I continued to sneak into the class. One time, I pretended to fall out of my chair and feigned blacking out. I even dabbed white powder under my eyes before class so I looked extra weary. My hope was that he'd rush over to me and carry me to the infirmary. But no, some stupid other guy had taken that chance from him. Worse still, this doofus was so clumsy that as he was carrying me through the doorway, he knocked my arm against the door frame. Ouch! I bit down on my lip and kept my eyes closed. Jeez, why had my amazing plan turned into a disaster? Ugh. I opened my eyes just in time to witness the nurse coming at me with a huge needle. I screamed out, jumped off the bed, and told her I was feeling much better now. Despite my failed plan in pretending to be sick, I immediately came up with another one. One day, I punctured my own bike tire, then pretended to sadly walk my bike to the parking lot and asked Joseph to give me a lift. He shook his head, said he was too busy, then whizzed off on his motorcycle. I stood there speechless. Worse still, I had to walk my bike all the way home. Another time, I waited until it was just him and me left in class. Then, on my way past him, I dropped my books. Then I said, "Oh no! How clumsy of me," as I bent down to pick them up. Oh yeah, I was also wearing my tightest pair of jeans. I didn't think that there's any way he could resist me in those, but he didn't even help me pick my books up. Instead, he coughed to clear his voice, then said, "Can you hurry up, please? It's my lunch break, and I haven't eaten since breakfast." Typical. I was there looking sexy, and all he could think about was his stomach. I wasn't going to give up now. I hadn't attended a bunch of yawn-inducing economics lectures for nothing. So, thanks to my social media snooping, I knew Joseph's birthday was coming up. On his actual birthday, I had a class with him. Talk about fate! So, I brought him a cake and made the entire class sing happy birthday to him. Then I announced I had a special birthday surprise for him, and I sang out Louis Capaldi's "Someone You Loved." The rest of the class whooped and cheered, but he just looked down at his desk. Okay, so this was getting frustrating. What did I need to do to get this guy's attention? Jeez, I'd tried everything already. That Friday, one of Susie's college friends was having a party, so I tagged along. I sat in the corner and moaned out to Susie how I felt like I was getting nowhere with Joseph. I just didn't get it. Whatever I did, he just didn't seem bothered. I moaned out, "Susie, should I keep flirting with him?" He didn't even lay an eye on me. He was such a tough guy, you know? Like an old boot. In fact, a rock had more personality than he did. Then Susie gave me a sign, but I kept saying, "And maybe he was gay or something?" Like, you see, he showed no interest in girls. That's when Susie hit my arm, and when I looked up, I was completely shocked. Joseph was right there looking at me. While I froze in shock, he shook his head, then stormed off. Without even thinking, I immediately stood up, rushed after him, and apologized. He ignored me and hopped onto his motorcycle, so I jumped onto the back of it and refused to move. "Please, I didn't mean what I said. Please, just listen to me," I begged. In the end, he passed me a helmet and told me to put it on. I couldn't help but feel excited. I'd wanted to ride on the back of his motorcycle ever since I'd first seen a picture of him on it. OMG. Now it was actually happening! Okay, so this wasn't how I envisioned it, but still, this was amazing. And I made sure to hug my arms tightly around his waist, purely for safety purposes, of course. After about 10 minutes, he stopped at a deserted road. I thought he was going to shout at me, but instead, he turned around and smiled at me. Wow! Without the frown on his face, he looked even hotter. "So, what were you saying about me earlier?" he asked. Nothing. It was just a misunderstanding." "That's funny, because it sounded like you thought I had no personality, and, what was it?" Oh, yes, you think I'm gay. I'm sorry. You might be gay. It doesn't matter if you are. You have a great personality. Suddenly, he leaned forward and kissed me. OMG, talk about amazing! I was shocked, but so happy, even though I didn't know what was going on. As soon as he pulled away, I pulled him back so we could continue kissing. Then he said, "I'm not gay, and I like to think I have a dazzling personality. I just like playing with you, but it seems like there must be a long time for you to be more mature. But it's okay. I'd train you then. Be my girlfriend." Turns out, he'd noticed me too, but he wanted to see what happened first. Also, he thought I needed to grow up a bit, as my stunts, although amusing, were a bit on the childish side. But he also found the amount of effort I went to get his attention flattering. He told me how he'd only shown up at that party as he'd overheard me talking about it at college, and he wanted to come just because of me. I don't go to his classes anymore, which gives me far more time to concentrate on my actual classes. But we are now an official couple, and I couldn't be happier. So this is the story of how I ended up with the hottest boyfriend known to mankind. My advice to you is to be bold in the pursuit of love. As if you just sit around waiting for it to drop on your doorstep, well, you'll be waiting forever. Go get him, Tiger! That's what I did, and it totally worked for me. So there's no reason why it can't work for you, too.
Hi, Ken here. I'm a breast specialist doctor. I'm trying not to be shy when I'm telling you this. It may be a bit awkward talking about my career. But because of it, or due to it, my life turns to be a drama. Well, I appreciate how hard it is for my patients to visit me. Let's face it, taking your clothes off in front of a stranger isn't easy for anyone. Yes, trust me, I've seen it all before, and it's no big deal. I'm just doing my job. I first met Gemma in my surgery. She'd found a lump and wanted me to examine it. When I checked it with my hand, this startled her, and her natural reflexes caused her to punch me in the face, and I passed out. I woke up a few minutes later to find both her and a nurse gawping down at me. My nose was still bleeding. I must have looked a right sorry state. She kept on saying sorry, but I reassured her that it was quite all right. And then with her permission, I continued with the examination. I found something, so I carried out a biopsy, and in the end, I had to tell her that she had breast cancer and needed to have a mastectomy. I could see her getting quite upset. I got used to patients' tears as they heard bad news. But this girl was so strong and brave. She just asked me some questions about the surgery and calmly left. Then, to my surprise, she impressed me more day by day. For the next few weeks, she brought me lunch every day. I thought she was worried I might bear a grudge for her punch or something, and this was her way of making it up to me. The food she brought was delicious, and I have to admit, seeing her was the highlight of my day. She was so kind-hearted and strong. What she was going through was horrible, but she never let it get her down. Instead, she walked over to my room with a skip in her step and a smile on her face. Soon, I fell in love with her, and I knew she felt the same way, as our chemistry was obvious. But she was my patient, and I had my career to think about, so I knew I needed to be careful. Still, I couldn't seem to resist her or her cooking. I was busy at the hospital all day, so I never had time to date, while she was a martial arts instructor for kids and only worked in the evenings. So she had a lot of free time. So she cooked lunch for me every day and brought it to the hospital to eat with me. Even after her successful mastectomy, she still showed up with food. That was when I couldn't stop myself from confessing my feelings for her. And she said yes. Sometimes she had to wait many hours until I finished seeing my patients at the surgery. When she was asleep waiting for me, she looked like a little kitten. But gradually, that kitten turned into a tiger. And I soon discovered that this tigress bites. Ouch. Things were complicated talking about my duties at work. My patients are mostly female, and when I see them, I need to, what I have to do. Of course, Gemma also knows this because she's been examined many times already. She always fantasized that I would fall for another girl, one who in her eyes was complete. I tried reassuring her that I loved her and only her. Surgery or not, in my eyes, she was perfect. But regardless of how many times I told her this, she failed to believe me. She had a point that no girl could accept her boyfriend touching other women in their things, and even discussing that with them daily. I told her, normally the human body is a beautiful product of nature, but in the eyes of a doctor like me, it's just the same mass of meat. Would you find a chunk of meat beautiful? Isn't that shivering to think like that? Then she argued, so in your eyes, I'm just some chunk of meat, huh? Ugh. I tried telling her it wasn't like that, but geez, she's stubborn. It took me ages to calm her down. Every day she showed up at the hospital and glared at me as the beautiful young women came in and out of my room. Her actions hadn't gone unnoticed by the nurses, who told me that she was making the patients feel uncomfortable with her scanning eyes and judgmental expressions. I told them it was nothing. She was just going through a hard time, that's all. And please be understanding that it was natural for her to compare herself to other women. As I told them that, I was not sure if I could stay sympathetic for her coming behaviors. That afternoon during a late lunch, Gemma asked me if the 8th girl entering my room was beautiful. Oh my Jesus, the only person I can remember was the one who walked out of the room 5 minutes ago. I only remembered that was the one with the cyst, but I didn't remember her face. Why do you have to think so long? Are you recalling her figure? You just need to say she's not beautiful, right? I muttered out, yes, right. Not beautiful at all. She frowned at me. That means you still remember her. What about her impressed you so much? I stiffened. What was wrong with women? A week later, when she brought me lunch, she asked me, do you and the red dress girl know each other? As she'd been here at least 3 times in a row already. Every time she dresses very well. Whoever wears a red dress to the hospital? Isn't it normal for patients to come see the doctor regularly? No, it's not normal. I want to see her files. The 3rd person from the bottom up. Come on, you know I'm not allowed to do that. Then you were not allowed to eat either. Geez, this was ridiculous. She wouldn't quit though, so in the end, I gave in and showed her the records. This girl had just had breast augmentation surgery, so that was why she came to be checked so often. Gemma just grinned and said, I knew it! Those are fake! I thought this would be the end of the matter, but it turns out it was just the beginning. Gemma bombarded me with questions about the red dress girl, such as did I find her attractive? I told her what I believed she wanted to hear, such as she was the only girl for me, and so on. But curiously, during the following days, she stopped going to the hospital. She just texted me a few messages every day and just disappeared. Maybe I should have chosen to be a specialist in psychology, as I may have been a good doctor, but I had no idea what women were thinking. A month passed, and she didn't show up at the hospital at all. I was so relieved at first, but couldn't stop wondering what my sassy girl was planning to do. Meanwhile, it was strange that the red dress girl popped up more and more, even though her health was completely fine. Then one day, she turned up saying she had pain and itching. I scanned and tested her, but couldn't find the cause. Hey lady, you are healthier than me. If you are not sure, please do a checkup once a month, or I can also refer you to another hospital. Where's your girlfriend? She interrupted me. Sorry? She told me to wait and see, but I can't wait anymore. Where is she? Huh? What was going on? Just then the door opened and in barged Gemma. Oh my God. She looked like a different person. She was dressed so sexy, not cute like before. As a doctor and as her boyfriend, I immediately realized that she'd got breast implants. Before I could speak, a man stepped in and put his hand on her hip. Then he gave a confused look as he looked at the patient and immediately removed his hand from Gemma's hip. What the hell is going on here? I demanded to know. Gemma stared at the girl and said, I told you that if you continued to deliberately flirt with my boyfriend, I wouldn't leave it alone. The man, who was the same age as my dad, looked at Gemma. What flirting? Then he looked over at the other girl. Are you cheating on me? Then the red dress girl grinned at him and said, Who is the cheater now? What? They two were a couple or something? But what was my girlfriend doing here? Gemma turned to the man. She started it first. I have proof. I have taken pictures of the time she approached my boyfriend. If you two get divorced, you will need it. You will not want to divide your property with a wanderer, right? I shouted out, What the hell are you doing? The man looked at Gemma. You played me? You seduced me just because she flirted with your boyfriend and you wanted revenge? God, the door was still open and doctors, nurses, and patients came to see this chaos. They just pointed and thought this was a jealous scene. So it transpired that Gemma tried warning the red dress girl off me. And when that didn't work, she tracked down her husband and seduced him. And she even got breast implants for that silly plan. OMG, she was crazy. After that incident, I was severely disciplined for affecting the image of the hospital and was forced to work in a volunteer clinic in Mexico for 6 months without any payment. Yup. Now I'm in Mexico to pay the price of the mistake of... No. What was my fault? I didn't do anything. So the moral of the story is, don't get involved with a patient, however good their cooking is. Trust me, it's so not worth it.
Ew, there's a fly in my drink. That's so gross. I'm not paying for this. The kid shoved the cup of lemonade in my hand, then ran away. I just saw you drop it in, and it's not even a real fly. Hey, stop! I shouted after him, but it was too late. He'd gone, and now so had the rest of my customers. Dang it! That was the 3rd time this week, and I knew exactly who was behind this. Michael! I glared over the fence, then charged towards his lemonade stand. Seeing his fake grin, I got even more furious that I poured the cup of lemonade over his sneakers, snatched a dollar bill out of his hand, and then walked off. You see, I'm Amy, and I'm the kind of girl who knows what she wants and gets what she wants. And what I want is for Mike to admit defeat and stop messing with my business. Ugh! I've been on this mission for the past 10 years. I kid you not, it's a literal war between us. It's not fun and games at all, especially now that we have our parents involved in this. You see, my parents and his parents are best friends. In fact, they're so close that I'm pretty sure back in the day, our moms planned their pregnancies together. So me and Mike were born only a week apart. And of course, I was born before him. So there's that. I've won right from the first round. In your face, Mikey! But even worse than the joint birthday parties, shared vacations, and being classmates with him for over a dozen years, I have to live next door to him too. Yep, our parents deliberately moved in next door as they thought raising us together would be fun. They dreamed of us being the best of friends like them. Ugh, no chance. Instead, our disliking for each other began at an early age. Whenever Mike came over, he would throw my Barbie dolls across the room, cut the hair off of them, or wrap my dollhouse in toilet paper. So I retaliated by turning his room into a Lego minefield. Ha! And then I drew flowers on his stupid face while he was napping. Our parents put this down to the cute little things kids did, but nothing about this was cute. This meant war. Our feud heated up once we started to go to school. Everything was a contest between us, from grades, school activities, and even just for the window seat on the school bus. Once, before the summer holidays started, our teacher suggested that over the break, we could have fun helping out our parents with some useful activities, like making homemade goods and selling them in our front yard. Upon hearing that, I caught Mike's challenging look and knew that this meant one thing. Okay then, game on. On the first day, I got up early to set up my lemonade stand out in my front yard. But then I looked to my left, and guess what I saw in dear Mikey's yard? Yep, a lemonade stand. Ugh! Why did he have to be such a copycat? We both seemed to attract lots of customers, but I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like he was selling more than me. So, over the summer, I used my profits to upgrade my lemonade stand little by little, with eye-catching decorations, promotions, and I even added lemon snow cones to my menu. Finally, my queue seemed notably longer than Mike's. The snow cones were doing the trick. But then, a loud speaker sounded out from next door. Come and try my new iced tea! Handmade using my secret recipe! Try it today at an introductory half-price offer! To my utter dismay, most of the people in my queue left and went over to Mike's stand. Ugh, the sneak. Then worse, he started blasting out catchy tunes to catch people's attention. That summer ended, but it had kickstarted the entrepreneur dreams in our little hearts. So throughout the next summer breaks, we continued to grow our businesses. I expanded my stand to sell a selection of drinks, snacks, and fast foods, with delivery service too. Once, with my friend's help, we even included a car washing service. Another time, we opened a little creche in our garden so busy parents could drop their kids off for a couple of hours, and also grab a drink to go while they were there. Sounds good, right? But you know what? Whatever I sold, whatever I did, a couple of days later, Mike went and did the exact same thing. And then he had the cheek to accuse me of copying his ideas. Ugh, he was so annoying. Anyway, now at 17, what started out as a fun hobby expanded so much that I opened a mini diner in my garage. At first, it just made sense, as it meant I had customers regardless of the weather. Plus, there were also a few tables outside, and not to brag, but the seats were rarely empty. But then, of course, you guessed it, Mike went and turned his garage into a mini diner too. Ooh! Our diners became well-known hotspots in our neighborhood, and they proved so popular that our parents continued to run them all year round. I was mad that whatever I did, Mike went and did it too. Then, to bug me further, he sent his friends around on a Saturday, and they just sat there taking up all of the seats, while only ordering Cokes. So, I sent my friend Cynthia around to his diner, and she pretended to have food poisoning after eating their food. Then she proceeded to fake gag and ran to the restroom back and forth until the customers all freaked out and left. But then he started to spread negative feedback about our place on the internet, and I did the same in return. Ugh, there's no ending to this fight ever! But I will never back down. I knew Mike had a huge crush on this Stacy girl in his science class, and one time after school, I saw him leading her into his house, probably to bore her senseless, bragging about his lousy business again. So I quickly put on makeup and changed into a cute dress. It's showtime, baby! I went over to Mike's house right on time to see him serve Stacy some of his restaurant's signature dishes. I put on an act and jumped on him. You're cheating on me with this girl? She has nothing on me! How could you? I continued to make a scene, pulling on Mike's hair and screaming, until Stacy looked super awkward and made an excuse to leave. Result! But uh-oh, Mike didn't seem to see the funny side of this. I'd actually never seen him look this mad before. His ears went bright red, then he shouted at me. Amy, competition or not, have I ever interfered in your private life? You've crossed the line this time. He knocked over the drink he'd made for Stacy, then sneered as he walked away. Seeing as you let yourself in, you can let yourself out. So, seemed like I'd won this round, but why didn't it feel good at all? And more like embarrassing. After that, Mike wouldn't even look me in the eye. Whatever. I mean, he would soon mellow down and mess with my business again anyway. Right? Then one day after school, I arrived home to find my parents sitting with some strange, professional-looking man. They called me over to join them. Then the man told me how he wanted to open a well-known fast food franchise in the neighborhood. Upon seeing me looking not really interested in what he was saying, he snidely remarked, Come on, you get what I mean. It'd be ridiculous to have 3 fast food restaurants all in the same place, right? And let's face it, yours is just some fun little kiddie's hobby, which will never go anywhere. Take this. He held out an envelope. And go focus on your grades. Just leave business to the adults. Furious, I snatched the envelope off of him. Yep, it was full of dollar bills. How dare he try and bribe me? What a jerk! So I threw it back at him, then stormed off. Think about it, Amy! The man shouted after me. Don't go making a decision you'll come to regret. The next day, when I arrived home from school, the man was sitting in my diner eating my awesome pancakes. Ugh! Why couldn't he get the hint? I stormed over and told him to leave. He grinned at me, then said,
These are good. You know, I think there's room for both of our businesses. All you have to do is take some items off your menu.
He gestured to the pancakes.
And spread some rumors about Mike's Diner's hygiene not being up to scratch to close it down, and I'll let you keep your diner.
Seeing my confused look, he added another push.
I'm only telling you this because I know you're a smart girl. Smarter than that boy. So, choose wisely.
Well, that's true. I am smarter than Mike, but this was crazy. I spent all evening considering it. I mean, there's no way I could compete against a big-name franchise, but this way I stood some sort of a chance, right? But as annoying as Mike was, could I really do this to him? At 2 a.m., I sat up in bed, still so torn about this all. I rushed next door and threw a stone at Mike's window. The light in his room turned on right away. Obviously, he was having a sleepless night too. He looked out and saw me, then he joined me on the porch, and we sat there in silence for a good while. Then he spoke up. "Ames, your pancake tower is amazing. Really?" Sighing, I replied, "Honestly, I drool just thinking about your double-deck burger. But if we don't take those dishes off our menus, I think that man will find a way to close us down." He shook his head. "Well, the Ames I know wouldn't quit that easily, right?" I let out another long sigh. "Yeah, but this is different. They're a big-name franchise. Our small little dining wouldn't be able to hold up for long, sooner or later." Then we fell back into this despairing silence. "I say we can do it. We can do it together." Mike suddenly stood up and pointed at our houses. "We have plenty of space to open up one big diner. Ha! What do you say?" Me and him working together? Would that ever work? But, well, nothing's impossible for big girl Amy. I grinned at him. "Bring it on. Let's fight till our last breath." So, the very next day, we joined forces and started preparing for the opening of the joint diner. Naturally, our parents were, of course, thrilled with the idea. They happily broke down the fences and even built a joint corridor to connect our houses together. We're now officially registered as one business and have all of our food, safety, and hygiene certificates. You know, the boring but official stuff. As for the franchise man, it turns out people in town are loyal to us. So when the story of his dirty tricks spread out, everyone said they'd boycott his restaurant if he ever opened it. So we never heard from him again. Huh, that's karma for you. And what happened next? Well, Mike and I are still running our business together, and it's going pretty well so far. It's a real family affair, with everyone helping out. Actually, it turns out running our own business together is far more fun than competing against each other. Maybe Mike isn't as bad as I always made him out to be, and sometimes I still claim myself to be his girlfriend when I catch a girl lurking around him. I guess he should learn to get used to having only one girl in his life. And thinking about it, I suppose that's always been me. I was standing outside of college chatting to my friends when suddenly a police car pulled up, and from the car's window, a handsome police officer waved at me, then told me to hurry up. I excitedly waved back at him, said goodbye to my friends, and rushed to him in front of their admiring eyes. So, I'm Daisy, and the handsome cop is Levi, my amazing, brave boyfriend. We first met at the library in town. I was there for my studies, and he was looking for some crime books. We started dating, and now a year later, we're madly in love. There are so many things that I love about dating a cop, such as seeing him in his uniform. It never fails to make me beam with pride. And I'm not gonna lie, he has abs of steel due to all of his workouts. Swoon! Besides, he has the cutest quirky habits. Like, when we go to a restaurant or the theater, he always scans it first to check if it's safe. But as good as being with him is, there are a few bum points, such as his unpredictable work schedule. Day, night, weekends, you name it, he works it. Then, when we finally managed to plan something, he sometimes got an emergency phone call and had to bail on me. This sucked, especially when it was my sister's wedding. But without a doubt, the most annoying thing of all is his popularity with other girls. They're like moths to a flame around him, especially this one colleague of his, Ellie. One time, Levi brought his colleague Brad over while I was there studying. I heard Brad remark,
"Levi, I never thought you'd end up with a bookworm. I thought you'd end up with Ellie. Everyone can see you two have a strong connection."
Levi tried laughing it off and saying that it was nonsense, but the jealousy rose up in me. By the time Brad left, I was really upset about it, so I packed up my books and went to leave. He stopped me and asked me what was wrong. Trying my best not to cry, I blurted out, "Why aren't you with Ellie? You spend all your time with her." He shook his head, smirked, then said,
"Ignore Brad. He's a joker. And yeah, I spend time with Ellie. I work with her. But it's you I love, and everyone knows it. In fact, why don't you move in? Then we can spend more time together."
My sadness was soon overlapped by happiness, and I jumped into his arms and squealed out, "Really? Yes, for sure!" This was so exciting. I moved in a few weeks later, and at first, living with Levi was the best thing ever. But over time, there were little niggling things that started to play on my mind. For example, one day I was chatting to the new neighbor when Levi arrived home and in a stone-cold voice demanded I go inside. Then he sternly told me never to talk to strangers. But come on, I'm a naturally chatty, friendly girl who loves talking to people and making new friends. I don't know, I guess it was me overreacting? I mean, he was just looking out for me, right? But then his need for control worsened when once I arranged to meet my friends in town. Levi was going to come too, but then he had a last-minute work call and couldn't. When I said I'd just get a taxi, he freaked out and told me I couldn't go. After I got upset about it, he reluctantly agreed to let me go. He called a reputable taxi firm to pick me up, then told me I had to be back by 10 p.m. But after a few drinks, I lost all sense of time. I was just having too much fun. I was dancing with my friend when Levi stormed in, grabbed my arm, and pulled me out of there. Everyone was staring at us, not helped because he was in his cop uniform. I even heard one man tut out,
"It's always the innocent-looking ones, isn't it?"
It was so embarrassing. At home, I sat there brooding while he got me a glass of water. When he tried passing it to me, I jumped up to my feet and screamed at him, "You're being ridiculous! And thanks to you, everyone in the bar thinks I'm some sort of criminal! I don't need a curfew!"
"It's not like that."
He sighed. But I was so upset, I brushed past him and slammed the bedroom door behind me. I cried myself to sleep. I hated arguing with him. I gave him silent treatment throughout the next day. But then in the evening, he arrived home with a gift box and apologized for making me sad. That was so sweet. I gave him a hug and said, "I'm sorry too." Then I opened the box. It was a really lovely watch. I noticed that it had an extra button on it, but I didn't think much of it. I stared down at it admirably as he fixed it on my wrist. That's how caring my boyfriend was. So I decided to buy him something too. The next day after college, I went to the mall. Suddenly, Levi called me and asked me where I was. I wanted the gift to be a surprise, so I told him I was at home. Crossly, he said,
"Daisy, don't lie to me. I know you're at High Hill Shopping Mall. Come home at once."
Huh? How did he know that? I gave up on finding a gift and went home. When he got back, I asked him how he knew where I was, and I saw him briefly glance at my watch. Then, he admitted that he had GPS fitted to it, but it was only so he could keep me safe. What? I wasn't a kid anymore. How could he use it to follow me? We had a huge fight, and I told him he was controlling and crazy, and he needed to stop treating me like a little kid. Then I shut myself away in the bedroom. The next day, when I woke up, Levi had already left for work. I was so wound up, so I decided to go for a jog to clear my head. Obviously, I left the watch at home, and also my phone. When I got back, I was about to head for the shower when I heard my phone ringing. It was Levi. Then I noticed that I had 50 missed calls and a ton of messages from him. What? This wasn't normal. I'd only been gone for an hour at the most. Anyways, I put the watch back on, then suddenly the door banged open and Levi stormed in, and he yelled at me,
"Are you okay? Where did you go? Why didn't you answer my calls?"
This sucked, as I love him, but I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. So I told him I needed my freedom, then headed for the door. He looked so mad as he grabbed my hand, pulled me into the upstairs room, then locked me inside. I banged on the door and pleaded with him to let me out.
"Daisy, trust me. This is for your own good. You're not safe out there."
Then I heard his footsteps trail off and knew he'd left. I curled up into a ball and cried myself to sleep. When I woke up, it was getting pretty dark out there. I searched the room for something to help me and found a rope ladder. The perks of living with a prepared cop. I used it to climb out of the window, but as soon as I reached the ground, 2 men appeared. Then suddenly, the world turned black. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I was in a dark, damp room and I was tied up. The 2 men were sitting by the door and talking to each other. I began to panic. I'd seen enough movies to know that this was bad. One of the men looked over at me, and I quickly closed my eyes. But it was too late. He'd seen I was awake, so he walked over and said,
"Ah, welcome back, sweetheart."
Panicked, I asked, "Who are you? Why me?" He sniggered out,
"Ah, yes. If only that boyfriend of yours was here, then we could ask him."
Then he picked up his phone, and seconds later, I heard Levi's voice in the other line.
"Hello? Remember me? We seem to have something of yours."
I heard the fear in Levi's voice.
"Let her go! Your wife's death wasn't her fault. It's your fault she's dead. Now it's your turn to lose the woman you love. Come here alone if you want to see her face again. And don't even think about calling for backup."
He hung up the phone, then peered down at me before he kicked the empty barrel next to me. I jolted back, and he laughed. It was terrifying. Not long after that, they dragged a beaten-up man into the room. "Levi! Oh no!" Levi managed to look at me, forced a smile, and slurred out,
"My flower girl. Don't worry, I'm here now."
The gang laughed at this. Then he stopped in front of Levi and said,
"I think you and me need a little chat. Let's call it man business."
I knew I needed to find a way to help him. But what? That's when I looked down at my watch. It already had GPS, so perhaps the extra button did something. I struggled to press it, which wasn't easy with roped hands, trust me. But eventually I managed to. By this point, Levi was unconscious, and I started sobbing. I didn't want to lose him. Not like this. The one man set something up next to him. "Oh no, it was a bomb!" He sneered out.
"You have 30 minutes left to say goodbye to your lover, boy."
Then the man left. I called Levi's name and sobbed out how I loved him. I honestly thought we were both going to die there. And watching the timer count down to our doom was the worst feeling ever. Suddenly, the door burst open. At first, I thought it was those men back again. But instead, Brad and his team rushed over, saw the bomb, then quickly got both me and Levi out of there. I was pushed to the ground just before there was a big bang, and the house exploded. On the way to the hospital, Ellie explained everything to me. So, turns out this involved a difficult criminal case that happened last year. Levi had been investigating a group of drug dealers, but an incident happened, and the gang's leader's wife accidentally fell from the building and died. They arrested most of the dealers, but some got away, including the gang leader. Then recently, Levi had received images of me outside college and our house from them, and took this as a threat to my safety. Well, that explained all of Levi's controlling and weird behavior. I felt so bad for misjudging Levi. He was the sweetest, bravest man, and I loved him so much. I stayed by his side as he recovered in hospital. Then one day, he finally opened his eyes, looked at me, and muttered out,
"There's my flower girl."
I hugged him, gently, of course. It was such a relief to know he was going to be okay. The gang is still out there somewhere, but hopefully they'll catch them soon. I do worry about it, but it's okay, as I know I have Levi to protect me. After all, he's my real-life action hero, and I know that with him by my side, we'll get through anything. Oops, still not it. Wow, why do they have an entire room just for shoes? That's mental. I muttered to myself as I closed the door. I swear, that was like the 20th door I'd opened. This place was insane. I had no idea which door would lead to my bedroom. To be honest, I've never been anywhere this lavish before in my entire life. Okay, it's now down to this door or that one over there. Wish me luck. But as I reached for the doorknob, I heard a voice.
"Hey, what prank you trying to pull on me again? I caught you red-handed this time, Gabby."
Startled, I turned around, and oh wow, there was this super cute guy standing there, looking so smug with himself. So this must be Jaden, the annoying big brother that Gabby had told me about. Only he didn't seem annoying to me. But, right, I needed to stay in character, so I replied, yeah, guess I was just too busy thinking about stuff that I didn't watch where I was going. Take it easy, bro. Then I immediately fled to the other room while Jaden watched me in confusion. Phew, that was a close one. And wow, was Gabby a princess or something? She lived in a literal palace. Look at her room. Oh, you must be wondering. Yes, I'm not Gabby. I'm Nancy. So how come Jaden didn't realize that I was not his sister? Now, let me tell you, that's one wild story. I was just a normal teenager, living my peaceful life in the Missouri countryside. My family doesn't have a lot of money, so I worked part-time in a nearby diner so I could save up for college. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but I knew I was lucky to have my loving family. They're my everything. So, anyway, it wasn't uncommon for schools from St. Louis to arrange trips out here to show the kids what country life was like. And on days like those, the diner could get pretty hectic, and today was no exception. By the time my shift finished, I was a tired, sweaty mess, so I took the scenic route home to unwind. That's when I heard this girl screaming for help. She must have slipped and fell into this ditch. I quickly found a big branch to help pull her out of there. Then she brushed the dirt off her as she said, "Thanks." But as she looked up at me, OMG! We both jumped up in such a fright that we almost stumbled back into the ditch. She looked exactly like me. I pinched myself to check I wasn't hallucinating or something. I mean, I was super exhausted from work. We stared at each other gormlessly for a bit. Then she suddenly reached out her hand and slapped me. Ouch! I raised my eyebrows at her, and she just grinned back. Oops, sorry. Just checking this isn't a dream. That's when I saw it. Her bracelet. The pendant on it was a strange shape. A strange shape like mine. I held out my wrist to slot my bracelet's pendant into hers, and it formed a butterfly. What's more, carved on the back of it was our birthday, November 3rd. Oh my God! No wonder why! I always asked my parents why they bought me such an ugly bracelet. Turns out it was 2 halves of a whole? She shrieked. So, do you think we're twins? I was still in shock, but I managed to mutter out, "Must be." She excitedly clapped her hands together, then pulled me into a hug. She said her name was Gabby, and her field trip was so dull that she wandered off, then ended up lost and stuck. Then I told her about my loving family, and she told me about her city life. I thought her life sounded awesome, but she didn't think so. Nah, it's seriously so boring over there. I just want a happy, drama-free life like yours. It makes sense now. I see why my parents love my brother more than me. I'm obviously adopted. But hey, at least you have your friends and get to go to a good school. School? That's the worst part. I hate it. Then she paused and turned to me. Nancy, I have an amazing idea. How about we switch places? This was crazy. An hour ago, I thought I was an only child, and now I was staring at my twin. Gabby seemed adamant switching places was the best idea ever, as I'd get a taste of the city life while also helping her ace her upcoming exams. This did sound tempting. I mean, it wasn't every day your long-lost twin appeared and offered you the adventure of a lifetime, right? We didn't have much time to discuss it anymore, so we quickly switched clothes, phones, and further instructions about anything else would be discussed later over the phone. Then I showed her the way to my house, and I headed toward the crowd of noisy students lining up for the bus back to the city. Suddenly, a girl tapped me on the shoulder and in an annoyed tone said, Where have you been?" Blonde hair, a pink hairband, and wearing a choker with a heart pendant on it. Yep, this must be Katie, Gabby's best friend. I followed her onto the bus, then yawned and told her I was exhausted. I feigned sleeping for the duration of the journey back so she wouldn't start any more convos with me. So after that, things went by smoothly, until I got home and didn't know where I normally sleep at. But it's okay now, as I'm safe in Gabby's bedroom. The butler did knock on the door to ask me to come down for dinner. I know, the fact they have a butler is crazy. But I just lied that I'd eaten loads on the field trip. There was no time for food now. I needed to learn as much as I could about these people. I searched her room and looked through her yearbooks, family photos, anything. I thought I was ready to go to school as Gabby tomorrow. But, well, as if it was that simple. The next morning, I nervously came downstairs to go to school. And of course, I had to face the entire family now. Upon seeing me, the small talks all came flying at me. "How was yesterday's trip, dear?" I managed to mumble out, It was all right." Then suddenly, a hand rubbed my hair. "Hey, I'm taking your PB&J, okay? You won't eat it anyway." I turned to look and saw him grinning at me before he headed outside. Oh gosh, I thought I'd melted into a puddle. He's so cute. I just wanted to follow him. But then Dad cleared his throat. "Gabriella, can we please make it a day free of complaints from your teachers?" Oh God, Gabby, what had you possibly done? I gulped back, nodded in response, then hurried out of there. I awkwardly lingered in front of the mansion. This was the spot where the bus dropped me off yesterday, so hope this was how it worked. Then suddenly, a scary-looking guy pulled up on the other side of the street and yelled at me. "Babe, what are you doing? Get in!" Me? I was his babe? Oh, so he was Dylan, my sister's boyfriend. I walked over and reluctantly climbed on the back seat. "Hey, what's wrong? Are you still mad at me for letting you go on the field trip alone? Come on, you said it was okay." I didn't know what to say to him, so I stayed quiet and stared out the window. "Come on, babe. I mean, this is dumb. We both know how sitting in the back always gives you travel sickness." Gosh, I really needed to say something to shut this guy up, huh? "No, it's totally fine between us. It's just that I feel a bit under the weather. I need a little rest, that's all. And it's more spacey here." Well, that seemed to quiet him down, but I kept on catching him giving me odd looks in the rearview mirror. Look at him. Ugh! Gabby and I might be twins, but our taste in guys couldn't be any more different. Dylan looked like the bad boy type. Green hair, a nose ring, and drove some flashy sports car, while I prefer sweet and funny guys, like Jaden. But I didn't want to accidentally ruin my sister's relationship either, so when we got to school, I had to give him a peck on the cheek to make sure that we were cool. Yuck. His cologne stank. Luckily, I met Katie in the parking lot, so I followed her to class. Things were going great. At least, they were, until we got to Spanish class. The teacher, Mrs. Harrison, gave me this judgy look right from the moment I walked in. Turns out, Gabby hadn't handed in her homework, and she spent the whole of the last session painting her nails. Mrs. Harrison demanded to check my homework today. Well, of course, I didn't know I had homework. So, in a disappointed voice, she said, "Gabby, it's been 2 years and you still don't know how to conjugate any single verb. Are you proud of that?" Suddenly, I heard Katie whisper, "But at least she knows how to dress, Mrs. Harrison. Your sweater looks like it should have been thrown out 2 years ago." Then some of the class giggled. Oh my God, Katie? That was so rude. But luckily, the teacher didn't hear that. I quickly apologized to Mrs. Harrison and told her to just give me a pop quiz to make up for my missing homework. She did. And to her, and the whole class's total surprise, I slayed all the questions. After class, I told Katie that her comment about Mrs. Harrison wasn't cool. Laughing, she replied, "Geez, why are you so uptight today?" But on seeing my unfaltering expression, she quickly changed the subject. "You've still got to help me with the plan, okay? You promised." She winked at me. "What? What plan?" In confusion, I faked a smile at Katie. "Oh, don't you worry, girl. I got it all set." That night, Gabby called me and we updated each other on our first day. Things went better than expected. Apparently, she loved it there, and she felt so warm and connected with Mom and Dad, and she was sure that they were our real parents. She also enjoyed feeding the chickens and apple picking in the backyard. However, she did almost get me fired from work, as she didn't know how to use the oven, but she managed to charm her way out of it. I told her how I'd handled the Dylan situation and made peace with Mrs. Harrison. But oh, Gabby, Katie did mention to me about some plan? What is it? Oh, yeah, I promised to set her up with Jaden. I guess you'll have to carry it out for me now. My heart sank as I said, "Jaden? As in, your brother Jaden?" "Yeah, now not biologically. It's no wonder I just couldn't get along with him. Not like us, right?" I forced a laugh and changed the subject. But, oh no, Jaden was far more suited to me than rebellious Katie. But, okay, this was Gabby's life, so I needed to make sure I didn't mess it up. And maybe, when this twinning truth broke out, I'd get my chance with Jaden. For now, we agreed to continue living each other's lives. I suppose it was pretty easy, seeing as all Gabby seemed to do was hang out with her friends and avoid doing her homework. The only part I didn't like was setting Katie up with Jaden. And that's when things got complicated. Will we ever tell everyone the truth? Or this life swap is too much fun to stop? Stay tuned for part 2 to find out.
Ma'am, sorry to inform you of this, but according to our information, Bella Hiddleston was reported dead 2 months ago after disappearing in the forest, the secretary said. What? This couldn't be happening. But that's my name, and I'm clearly still alive. This was some sick mistake. I asked them to check again, but they kept saying the same thing. Had I been missing for so long that my family actually thought I'd died? The accident had been pretty crazy, so I was feeling confused. I mean, what had I been doing in a forest in Cambodia in the first place? I tried so hard to remember, but I couldn't recall anything. Luckily, some local villagers had found me in a trapping pit and helped me recover. Otherwise, I would have died. I then asked the people in the embassy to help me call my husband and sister. There had clearly been a big misunderstanding, and I wanted to fix this right away. God, the weight was killing me. The secretary tried, but she said, "Sorry, ma'am, we can't reach either of those numbers." This was unbelievable. I was stuck in a foreign country with no ID, no contact with relatives, and I'd been reported dead. But in a flash, I realized that I could borrow someone's phone to reach for my acquaintances via social media. So as soon as the secretary lended me hers, I went straight to my husband's profile. But I was so stunned, I almost dropped the phone when I saw his latest update. He'd just made an announcement that my funeral was taking place the following week. OMG! What was happening? How could this be real? I kept scrolling down his profile and saw my sister had posted an old selfie with him saying, "Ronnie, I know this is a tough time, but I'm always here for you. We'll get through this together." Hang on, what did she mean? Firstly, I wasn't actually dead. Hello? But also, I know my sister used to have feelings for Ronnie. Did she assume that she could just be with him now that she thought I was dead? What a traitor! We were so close. Surely she wouldn't treat me like this. I had to get home and sort this out once and for all. I asked the embassy to help me fly home without informing my family in advance. I wanted to surprise them. Believe it or not, the day I was due to arrive home was the day of my funeral. What a coincidence, right? I went directly to the funeral venue, in disguise, of course. I wore a huge black hat and sunglasses to hide my face and sat way at the back so no one would notice me. There were so many people there. My family, friends, and even my business partners. It was so bizarre. And then I saw Ronnie. He looked exhausted. I just wanted to run up to him and scream, "I'm alive! You can be happy again!" But then my sister Kylie appeared and took his arm and whispered something in his ear. I froze. They looked close, too close for comfort. And then I noticed people around me whispering, "Oh, it can't be that bad. He'll get a pretty penny from the insurance company for Bella's death." And then another lady said, "Not just that, but a younger, prettier wife too, by the look of things." I wanted to puke. Ronnie and Kylie were hugging each other now. All of this made me feel like my whole existence was meaningless. Nobody here really cared about me. I couldn't watch my sister and husband for a second longer. I ran out into the street and kept walking until I couldn't walk anymore. Then I found a motel to stay at. The next morning, I snuck home after my husband went to work. I needed to pick up some of my stuff and get some money. It was so weird being home. Everything looked the same, but I noticed none of my stuff was lying around anymore. Then I spotted it. A big box in the corner. I ran over to open it, and inside was all my belongings. I was shaking as I picked up the wedding photo that used to be on our nightstand. I mean, I was barely fresh in the grave, and already Ronnie had boxed me up. It was almost like he couldn't wait to kick me out of his life. Ouch! I wanted to get out of there, so I quickly went to our bedroom to get some cash and clothes. That's when I discovered a shocking secret that made me fall onto the floor. As I was taking my clothes out of my cupboard, a strange piece of paper fell out. And guess what? The first line caught my eye was Bella's death plan. It was a sketch showing the path leading to a waterfall and made up evidence along the way. OMG! This was it! I knew that waterfall. It was pretty close to where I had the accident. So, had Ronnie planned this? Was he sick in the head? What had I ever done to him to deserve this? I had to run out of there to clear my head, but something caught my eye at the newsstand. It was Kylie, on the front of the newspaper in an article about how she was going to be running the company in place of our grandfather. There was a photo of Kylie and Ronnie at the inauguration, and look how happy they were. They didn't seem to be upset about my death at all. I wanted to rip the paper up. But wait, why would my grandfather give up his position? He had never mentioned it. He loved his job. This didn't sound right. So I quickly took a taxi to his place to find out what was going on. When I got there, I was so shocked. My heart sank upon seeing him hooked up to medical equipment. Turns out that after he'd heard the news about my death, he'd had a heart attack. When he spotted me by the door, he was so stunned he almost fell off his bed. We hugged and cried, and I told him it had all been a big mistake. Gosh, I was so happy to see him. I could see he was tired, so I told him to rest up and I'd visit again soon. Then on the way out, I spoke to his assistant, Cody. "I need a favor. Could you help me prepare a case against Ronnie?" But suddenly I heard footsteps coming towards me.
Bella? Is that you?
I turned around, and it was Ronnie. I didn't even have time to think clearly before he rushed in to hug me tightly. I could feel the tears rolling down his cheeks, and he seemed genuinely shell-shocked to see me. I was disgusted, though. I pushed him away and said, "Stay away from me." But it was like he didn't hear me. He just said, "These have been some of the worst months of my life. I can barely sleep or eat. I can't believe you're alive." Liar! He was a liar! I started shouting at him, saying, "Stop acting like you give a darn! You wanted me dead! Just wait until this gets out. You'll be behind bars for the rest of your life." Then I took the sketch out of my bag and threw it at him. Ronnie swore he'd never seen it before, but I didn't believe it. If it's not his, then was he trying to say it was mine, or what? Ha! Hilarious. Suddenly, Cody interrupted our argument and said, "Calm down, please. Actually, I think the one who has been acting a bit shady recently is Kylie." Then Cody told us how, according to our grandfather's will, his inheritance would be split equally between me and Kylie. However, I was to be the one in charge of the company. Kylie had found out about this and had a big argument with our grandfather, and then not long after my accident, his health had deteriorated. Instead of letting him mourn my death, Kylie had insisted he transfer the business to her name so she could take care of it all. Then Ronnie said, "Bella, it was Kylie who set up our trip. Then you suddenly disappeared. I searched for you in Cambodia for weeks, but Kylie persuaded me to come home because your grandfather was so ill. Then the police canceled the case, and Kylie kept telling me to file your death certificate. I shouldn't have listened to her. I'm so sorry." "Stop blaming other people for your problem," I growled at Ronnie, but inside my heart, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Why would my sister do this? And then I heard Kylie's voice, and to prove it all, Ronnie told me and Cody to hide. And then he went towards her and said, "Kylie, about Bella's death." Before Ronnie could finish his sentence, she gave him a big smile and put her arm through his. "Well, now that her funeral is over, nothing is stopping us from being together, right?" Ronnie forced a smile. Then Kylie laughed and said, "Oh, come on. Don't be sad. My jealous sister didn't deserve you. You know what? She actually had this whole plan to test your loyalty, but then she ended up getting a taste of her own medicine." At that moment, my head started to hurt, and suddenly some of my old memories came flooding back. The sketch. It was mine. I was the one who'd made the plan. It all started when Kylie had told me that Ronnie was cheating on me, and I'd believed her and followed her advice to fake my own disappearance to test his love for me. How could I have been so stupid? When I realized I was alone in that forest and she wasn't coming back, I panicked and fell into a trapping pit, hurting my legs and getting stuck. It was all coming back to me now. I couldn't handle this. I ran towards her and painfully screamed, "How could you do this to me, Kylie?" At first, she was shocked to see me, but then she just smirked and said, "Huh, are you still alive? Well, either way, it's too late. The company is mine now. Oh, and so is Ronnie, baby." Then she just rolled her eyes and said, "You were just the adopted child, so what makes you think you have the right to always steal everything from me?" At that moment, our grandfather appeared and slammed his cane on the ground. "Kylie, stop it." Kylie just sulked and said, "Honestly, why would you give her the whole company?" Then our grandfather said, "Look at yourself, Kylie. Are you really fit to be running a company? Sort yourself out. You are a disappointment to this family with your dirty, nasty tricks." I couldn't believe Kylie was still using the adopted thing to hurt me. So what if I was adopted? That didn't mean I wasn't a part of this family. She'd always been so jealous of me, even though I hadn't done anything. Kylie started crying and ran out of there saying she was sick of never being anyone's favorite. Well, maybe if she hadn't left me to die, people would like her more. I was so shocked that she'd done this to me, and all because of jealousy. I won't lie. It took me so long to work through this. I still haven't forgiven her properly, but I guess it will just take time. As for me and Ronnie, we've taken over the family business, and I realized that Ronnie had always been loyal. Kylie had just made up that he was cheating because she couldn't bear to see me so happy. One thing's for sure, I won't ever be testing his love again. No more faking death for me.
I was out for my afternoon jog and decided to take a new route. Suddenly, I saw a huge European-style mansion and had to stop to gaze at it. The walls were covered in moss, and honestly, it looked pretty eerie. I looked up, and a flock of crows were standing on the roof cawing. It sent shivers up my spine, and immediately made me think of movies like The Conjuring or something. Wouldn't be surprised if that house was haunted. Suddenly, I got startled by the voice of an old lady. "The mansion looks magnificent, doesn't it?" I turned to look at her, and she continued, "But you'd better stay away from it." "Why?" I asked her. Then she looked at me more closely and said, "Oh, you aren't a local here, are you?" I told her I was from Minnesota, but that my parents had said I could spend the summer here with my aunt. "Well, dear, let me tell you. The owner of this mansion was a young girl, super rich, but kept herself to herself. Rumor has it, she worshipped Satan. Can you believe it?" I asked her, "So where is she now?" "Oh, she mysteriously disappeared years ago, and the house has been abandoned ever since," the lady replied. Okay, this was seriously freaky. My hair was literally standing on end. But for some reason, I was more intrigued than ever. Oh, sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm Ellie, a typical high school student, but also an avid detective story blogger. I spend a lot of my time on detective story forums and have always been attracted to weird and mysterious things ever since I was a little kid. Anyway, back to my story. So, one night, my aunt asked me to pop over to the grocery store to get some milk. On my way back, I passed the mansion and instantly got shivers. I looked up and saw a light flickering in a window on the second floor, like a candle or something. But no way. The old lady said the place was abandoned, right? The light kept flickering, and I couldn't stop watching. Suddenly, a shadow of a girl appeared. She was playing the violin, and the gloomy music was wafting through the cracks in the walls. Then, out of nowhere, a crow flew by screaming, "Caw!" I almost leapt out of my skin and ran straight home. How could anyone live in that freaky mansion? Wait a minute, what if I'd just seen the ghost of the owner who disappeared? Oh man, I had to figure this mystery out. I could even turn it into a detective story with a bit of horror thrown in for fun. As I lay there, I came up with the title, Real Life Death Mansion. And then I realized I could even make a YouTube video about it with real photos of the house and maybe even some footage taken inside as I uncover the mystery. Oh, this would be so good! I could barely sleep from excitement, and the next day, I asked my cousin Susan to come along and explore the mansion with me. "Hey Susan, want to come check out that creepy mansion with me?" "OMG, Ellie, are you crazy? You know that place is haunted, right? Like, full of ghosts and everything." "Yeah, that's why I asked you to go with me." I shrugged. "I would rather make a detour than walk past that house to get home. So what makes you think I would dare to go inside?" I tried to convince her it would be fun, but she kept refusing. Oh well, if no one dared to go into that mansion, then I shall be the first. Gathering up my courage, I went there alone. I managed to climb over the rusty iron fence that had almost fallen to pieces in the backyard. Then I noticed a door that was slightly ajar. As I got closer, I realized a satanic symbol was engraved on the door. Creepy! I closed my eyes, held my breath, and gently pushed the door open. The smell that hit me made me feel dizzy. A musty, abandoned kind of smell. I walked into the lounge, and it felt like I just walked into some old castle in France or something. There were cobwebs everywhere, and some massive ones hanging from the chandeliers. I looked around and noticed a portrait of a girl on the wall. She was beautiful, but her eyes looked so sad. Oh my, was this the owner? The one I'd seen playing the violin? I couldn't bear to look at the portrait any longer. It felt like her eyes were piercing my soul. I headed for the stairs and crept up as quietly as possible. I won't lie, I was terrified. It was so dark up there, and with every step I took, the floorboards creaked. I kept looking behind me, as it sounded like someone was following me. By this point, I'd broken out into a cold sweat. When I made it to the second floor, there was a long corridor ahead, but it was really weird. There was only one door. I walked towards it and pushed it open. It was a luxury room, definitely fit for a princess. And yep, there was the violin. Everything was coated in a thick layer of dust, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a picture. It was the same girl, but this time, her eyes were glowing red like fire, just like Sauron, the villain in The Lord of the Rings. I was so scared that I quickly turned the photo face down. This was when I heard the violin sound from somewhere. Okay, what was going on? The violin was right before my eyes, and I was supposed to be the only one in the house? I tried to calm down, took a deep breath, and walked in the direction of the sound next door. It was so weird, because the next door was an exact replica of the first room. Had I actually changed rooms? I walked towards the dressing table and noticed the photo in here was also turned face down. I picked it up, and it was the exact same photo, but this time, the face of the girl was bleached white. I dropped the photo in horror and ran off without looking back. I ran down the stairs 3 at a time, but when I reached the door, it was locked. I started banging on it, and by then I was hysterically crying. "Help! Help me!" I screamed. Suddenly, someone's hand touched my shoulder. My heart had definitely jumped out of my chest. Ah! I yelled at the top of my lungs, but when I turned around, there was this young guy standing there. A pretty cute one. Who are you?" I stuttered. He frowned at me and said, "Who are you? And why are you here?" I could barely speak as I was shaking so much. Then the guy said, "Come on, let's get out of here. You look horrified." Then he took out a key and opened the door. Are you a ghost or something?" I stuttered. He started laughing and said, "Pretty creepy place, right?" I asked him if he saw the photos too, and he said, "Yes, terrifying. Like something out of a horror movie," I added. "Exactly. Perfect setting for a horror movie." I stared in confusion, and he laughed and said, "Yup, we're making a movie. I mean, I'm gonna rent this place to make a horror movie." Then he introduced himself as Jack, a young director who was interested in detective and horror movies. He was just checking the place out to see if it was suitable. I couldn't believe it. Wow, this is literally a dream come true. I've been writing detective stories since I could hold a pen, and I've always hoped I'd become a screenwriter on horror and detective movies one day. I'm so honored to meet you. I'm Ellie, by the way. Then Jack replied, "The pleasure's all mine. It's a pretty exciting industry to be in. I'd love to read some of your stuff sometime." I couldn't stop grinning. Then suddenly, another person showed up. Jack introduced him as Michael, a member of his film crew. But compared to how friendly Jack was, Mike was serious and intimidating. Jack could tell that I was nervous, so he laughed and said, "Michael's been under a lot of stress, so he looks a bit grumpy, right?" I just smiled shyly and asked Jack if I could have his number. As I walked home, I couldn't believe how happy I felt. Who knew such a scary adventure would turn into an epic opportunity? I texted Jack right away, saying I would love to learn more about his film, and I had to admit, I might have had a slight crush on him. He was so cute. I kept checking my phone, but he hadn't replied. That was so disappointing. But then, a few days later, he asked me out for coffee. I was so excited, and seriously, we had the best time. He even offered to drive me home. When I got into the car, he told me to close my eyes. Eek! Maybe he was going to kiss me. I was so nervous, but suddenly, something hit my face, and I didn't know anything else. When I woke up, I found myself in some kind of warehouse, with my hands and feet tied and my mouth taped shut. Oh my God. Had I been kidnapped? Where was Jack? Suddenly, I heard a noise outside. I looked through the window and saw Jack and Michael talking to each other. What? Did the two of them plan this? But why? A moment later, Michael left, and Jack came towards me and removed the tape from my mouth. I started screaming, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then Jack said, "Listen, I'm not going to hurt you, I swear, but there's something I need to tell you." Then he confessed that he was a member of a criminal organization named Iron Gloves. His gang were operating from the mansion, and so everything from the story of the mysterious missing girl, the ghost playing the violin, the eerie photos, were all made up by them. They did it so that no one would dare approach their headquarters. According to the gang's rules, any outsider that entered the mansion would be killed to protect the secrecy of the group. Michael had seen me enter and reported it to the boss, so Jack had been forced to carry out the mission, but he didn't want to do it, so that's why he pretended to kidnap me. Dear good God, this was too much! He asked me to leave right away, but I was worried about him. He said, "Don't worry, I've been wanting to leave for a long time, and so I have a plan." Fast forward 2 years, and now I'm a freshman majoring in screenwriting. It's so exciting chasing my passion, but I still think that summer at my aunt's was one of my best yet. Terrifying, but thrilling. Oh, and as for Jack, after we chatted in the warehouse, he let me go, and I quickly packed up all my stuff at my aunt's and flew home. A few weeks later, I saw an article that said he'd turned himself in, and that the police had caught the Iron Gloves gang. Now, Jack's in prison, but will soon be free. I have a feeling that deep down, he's a good guy, and I hope that I'll have the chance to meet him again and get to know the real him better. Who knows? His real-life experience might help me write one hell of an awesome story, too. It was a regular morning, and I was sorting my books out in my locker when excited screams and cheers distracted me. Huh? It was way too early for this level of noise. A group of girls was lingering around the bulletin board. I walked over to take a look. Turns out, it was just the latest poster of Hillary, the prettiest girl in school, for her campaign of becoming prom queen. Well, yeah, typical reaction, since Hillary alone is too perfect already. All day, I found myself thinking about the Queen Hillary poster. Oh, I wish I could be as beautiful as she is. I mean, I'm not that ugly, but damn sure I'm not beautiful like her. OMG, look at me. My cheekbones aren't defined enough. My lips aren't pumped enough. My hair is too frizzy. And I literally have to jump on the spot to get myself into my favorite pair of jeans. Let's face it, I was plain and ordinary, while Hillary, she was oh so beautiful. Mom called me down for dinner, so I sat there glumly twirling my fork around my plate. Mom must have noticed something was up, as frowning she asked me, "Sonia, what's wrong? You've barely touched your dinner." "I'm not hungry," I sighed out. "Anyways, I'm big enough already, and ugly enough." "Sweetie, don't be silly. You look lovely." Yeah, right. Mom was only saying that because she felt like she had to. I thanked her for dinner, then went back to my room and scrolled through Hillary's profile. There wasn't one bad picture of her. Not one! She was so flawless, while I was, well, full of flaws. The next day, I was hanging out on the school field with my best friend Sydney and my boyfriend Lucas when Hillary passed by in a stunning dress. Jeez, look how gorgeous she was. Earth to Sonia. Sydney threw a potato chip at me. I turned and gave her a "what was that for" look. She rolled her eyes and continued, "Stop staring at little Miss Popular and pay attention to us. You know, your actual friends. Hello?" Sorry, I sighed. It's just that she looks so pretty in that dress. It's not fair. She doesn't even have to try. Well, on me, it'd look like I was wearing a garbage bag. Stop comparing yourself to her. It's dumb.
Yeah, Hillary's Hillary. You are you. And you have your own beauty.
I shook my head. Yeah, right. I didn't have any beauty. Instead, I was ordinary, while Hillary was extraordinary. Chemistry was the only class I shared with Hillary, and for that entire 45 minutes, I just couldn't stop staring over at her, transfixed. As the teacher droned on about the periodic table, I daydreamed about how amazing it would be to have hair as glossy, skin as clear as hers. I caught her staring back at me a couple of times, and one time she mouthed, "What?" then rolled her eyes and annoyedly turned away. But still, I couldn't take my eyes off of her. After the lesson, I followed her to her next class, even though it was in a different direction to where I needed to be. I watched on with envy as her boyfriend, Ethan, the captain of the basketball team, looked at her adoringly, and how her pretty friends flocked around her. It must be so awesome to be that perfect. My Hillary obsession continued at home. Each evening, I scrolled through her profile and saved any new pics she'd posted. Then I'd just lay in bed staring at her perfect features and comparing them to my not-so-perfect ones. I even printed out my fave pics of her and framed them on my desk. Then one day, my worst nightmare came true. I was on my way to meet Lucas when I saw him standing in the hallway and talking to Hillary. That's odd. A popular girl like Hillary would never enjoy talking to a normie like him. Oh man, look how Lucas keeps laughing, then giggling. What if Hillary likes him? That kind of girl definitely gets whatever she wants easily. I couldn't watch any more of this, so I sent Sydney an emergency message and rushed off to the bathroom. She found me crying in the cubicle and asked me what was wrong. I told her what had happened and she frowned. Are you insane? Lucas was probably just being polite to her. Geez, he's with you for a reason, so get over this Hillary fixation. It's weird. Why did Sydney have to be so rude? I wanted her support, not her backlash. So I didn't meet up with her after school as planned. Instead, I went straight home and looked through my Hillary photos. I cut out sections of her lips, nose, hair, and stuck them on top of a photo of me. Looking down at it, well, wow, I looked so much better. It was then that I decided I would have a perfect face like her. So clutching the improved photo, I hurried down to my mom and waved it in her face. Look how perfect I'd be if I changed a few things. Please will you lend me the money to pay for surgery? Please? Mom looked horrified.
Sonia, you're only 17, and you're already beautiful. You don't need to put yourself through all this pain and risks to look like someone else.
I tried explaining to her that I didn't want to continue my life looking as plain and boring as I did, but she didn't listen at first. It took me a lot of time to talk her through, and let's face it, she also has had a nose job before. So what's the big deal about me getting mine fixed too, along with a few more touch-ups? That summer, I lied to Sydney and Lucas that I was spending the whole holiday with my dad and stepmom. I showed the surgeon a photo of Hillary as an example of the results I wanted. So he narrowed my nose, inserted cheek implants to give me a more defined look, and injected my lips with filler. I woke up after surgery in agony. Oh dear God, it hurts! I couldn't talk, and even crying was painful. Worse still, with all the bandages, I resembled an Egyptian mummy. Then, when the bandages were removed, my face was all swollen and puffy, and I had to do these massages to improve my facial muscles again. Pain is beauty, and beauty is pain, isn't it? Mom wasn't exactly impressed with what I did, as I didn't really tell her I would change my entire face. Still, she spent the summer looking after me, even though I did have to put up with her whining and sometimes even tears. Once healed, all that was left to do was have my hair colored and cut like Hillary's. and changed my style to match hers. With my new look complete, I looked at the mirror and smiled. Finally, I was beautiful. I returned to school excited for everyone to see my new look. But as I walked through the hallway, everyone stared and gossiped about me. People I didn't know surrounded me and bombarded me with questions such as, "Which parts did you fix? How much? And did it hurt?" Nobody actually complimented me or anything. Then, as I was sorting out my locker, I heard a cough. I looked up to see Sydney standing there with her arms folded. "So, was it worth it?" I wasn't in the mood for this, so I replied, "You can't say anything nice, can you? This is who I am now. I'm being my true self, and I'm happy." "No, this is you trying to be someone you're not." I slammed my locker shut and stormed off. What kind of person doesn't support her own best friend? My day went from bad to worse when I met Lucas at lunch. He glared at me, then angrily said,
"Sonia, why? There was nothing wrong with you before, but now you're just a clone of someone else."
He went to leave, but I held his arm. "Please, I did this because I want to be more beautiful. For you. I did this for you." Lucas shook his head, then gave a thoughtful sigh. He didn't try to leave after that, but he kept giving me this pitying look. Then, when I was walking to class, a guy ran up behind me and put his arm around my waist.
"Hi there, my baby."
Startled, I immediately pushed him away. Oh, it was Ethan, Hillary's boyfriend.
"What's wrong? But, wait, why does your face look so weird?"
I pushed him off me and ran away. OMG. That was horrifying. My heart was still pumping. From then on, people continued to mistake me for Hillary. Then whenever Sydney sat with me, they gossiped about how tragic it was that she was trying to be a cool kid. It made her feel uncomfortable, so she stopped hanging out with me at school. I had to sit by myself and felt so lonely. Then there was Lucas. Whenever I tried so much as hug him, he flinched. Then he admitted that he found my new look strange and intimidating. Life carried on, and prom grew closer. I noticed one of the Queen Hillary posters had been ripped off, and in its place was another poster of a girl named Kim. Geez, this prom queen campaign seems very stressful. Then, as I stepped outside, I heard someone shout, "Now!" Then the next thing I knew, stuff was thrown at me. In just a blink, I was covered in tomatoes and eggs. Yuck! Then a group of girls smirking stepped out and one said,
"You should just give up trying to be prom queen before it's too late."
I blurted out while taking pieces of eggshell off of my hair. "What? Why attack me?"
"Oh, wait! Girls, it's the plastic Hillary wannabe. Well, you still deserve this. Have fun being a failed version of Hillary."
They laughed as they left, leaving me standing there feeling worse than ever. I went to the bathroom to clean myself up and walked in on Hillary applying her makeup in the mirror. Whoa, her face actually wasn't so perfect with all the makeup on.
"Oh, wow, it's you."
She glanced at me.
"You know, everyone is talking about you even more than me,"
she said, while covering her eyelid with tons of eyeshadows.
"I mean, I'm kind of flattered, but trust me, you look ridiculous. You're like the Walmart version of me. I feel sorry for Lucas for having a super insecure girlfriend like you."
Then she flicked her hair and left. I looked at myself in the mirror, tears streaming down my face. So Hillary was just a mean girl who faked her butt off to build a friendly image and covered her mediocre face with a lot of makeup. She wasn't perfect, just like me. From then on, I desperately longed to look like myself again. I begged Mom to lend me the money to fix my face, but she refused.
"No more. Once is enough. Isn't this all you wanted?"
Great. Now I was going to be stuck looking like this forever. Until one night, my cheeks started aching. Soon, I couldn't so much as twitch my face without being in serious pain. Mom found me clutching my face in agony and drove me to the hospital. The doctor told me my implants had leaked and I needed emergency surgery to remove them. This happened a month ago. Now, when I look in the mirror, luckily, I don't see Hillary anymore. Instead, I see me, but in a quite different look. I've well and truly learned my lesson, and Sydney and Lucas have been there to help me through everything. Now I know that I should have learned how to love myself instead of comparing myself to someone else. I am who I am. And you know what? I now realize that I'm okay with that.